Welcome to Tramlines, a podcast from Agri. I'm your host, Tony Smith, putting your questions to the experts. In this episode, we're talking to Georgie, Tom and Will from Rowles Farm. Today, we're talking about farm diversification. What is the best approach to take when looking at new ventures? And what can it bring to the farm business? So, welcome to you all. Good afternoon. How are you doing?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Very much.
Yes. Yeah.
Good. And just to say to the listeners listening in today that Tom, Will and Georgie are all, surrounding the same microphone. So they're looking very squashed up there. And, looks like in the kitchen, is it? Is it in the kitchen there?
Yeah. We'll try not to all talk at the same time, but we'll see.
Yeah, no, very good. Well, look, it's going to be fun. And we're really looking forward to learning about what you've been doing on your farm and particularly with diversification into growing this exciting vineyard. But can I start off? Maybe, Georgie, you could start us off by telling us a little bit about the history of your farm, your family farm.
Yeah, exciting. So we're third generation on our farm. So Grandad, Norman Carlisle, he actually farmed in Wiltshire. And the M4 motorway went straight through his farm. So he had a little nice payout and moved to near Newbury, to south of Oxford, where we are now in West Ilsley. And here he bought a bit of land, and he also took on a farm off Lockinge Estate. And that was a three-generation tenancy. And my father took it on after that, alongside my uncle. And then we're now third generation on that farm. But a couple of years ago in 2015, we were very lucky. They put the farm up for sale, and Lloyds Bank were on our side. And we managed to buy the farm. And here we are now.
Fantastic, and I can tell from the enthusiasm amongst all three of you that you're really passionate about what you're doing with that farm. So tell me a bit, Will, about what you're currently growing and producing on your farm.
So we're a mixed farm. The crops, so arable-wise, we grow winter wheat, winter barley, spring barley, and attempt to do the dreaded winter oilseed rape. As long as the flea beetle, slugs, you name it, partridge, don't eat it all. And then sheep-wise or livestock-wise, we have a breeding flock of ewes, as well as some ewe lambs that come down from Northumberland. And then we have what I call Basset all sorts cows, so Charolais, Limousin, Aberdeen Angus, sort of a mixed all sorts, really. It keeps us busy.
But I'm going to challenge you there because you're forgetting a couple of animals that you've also got on your farm. Is that right?
You are correct. Brian and Norman, the alpacas.
There you are. Maybe the most important livestock.
The most useless animal we have, I think.
Okay, fantastic. So Tom, tell us a bit about what you see as the challenges that your farm faces growing those crops and having those livestock enterprises.
Well, this year's been a critical one, really, because, our annual rainfall has been down significantly, really. So I'd say our main challenges would be, the weather, climate. It's becoming hotter and drier. So that's pretty a big challenge. I guess volatile crops and the markets these days, who knows when to sell. In hindsight, we should have sold back in May, but we missed that, so we can't go and live off hindsight now. But that's another big challenge of when to sell, sort of thing. And the prices are rising. Like, obviously, fertilizer costs are going through the roof as we speak. Chemical costs, everything's fuel, labour, you name it, everything's just increasing big time.
So it is really difficult times, isn't it, for the farm enterprise to be able to budget, to know where it's going when you're investing in a crop that's going to be in the ground for many months, isn't it? So Georgie, you were, as I understand it, coming back to the farm business, wanted to come back to the farm business. Did that drive the interest in diversification as much as what you're talking about, Tom, which is that need for resilience and sustainable enterprises? Which was the bigger driver, do you think?
I think so. I think we all knew, we all had conversations about if I was to come home, all three of us were going to be, on the farm working, that we'd have to bring something else to the table. And Dad's always been really open about us wanting to do, something else, whether that be diversifying down the glamping route, what we've really wanted to do, which was start the vineyard. he's turned around to us and said, bring me a business plan, start the process, let's see what happens. And we were really lucky to find the right people to help us, like consultants, and actually not too far away, and people to map soils and to basically get the ball rolling, which I think, looking back now, was a hell of a long time to get the ball rolling on the whole vineyard side. But we're so glad that it's all happened now, and that we've gone about it properly, really.
Well, I think Dad's just thinking probably wine, and more wine. So that's what he's thinking.
Is that right? I understand actually from what we said earlier on, or what you said earlier on, was that actually someone else in the family had more of an impact as to going for the wines. Who was that?
Oh, Grandma.
Grandma, yeah.
Yeah, so, she is very happy. Very, very happy.
So look, that's fantastic. But how far back did you start the planning process?
So our first vines went in 2021. So we planted now 6.5 hectares, and before then, so before they got planted, we did 5 years worth of research. So there was a little bit of COVID and Brexit pushing us back, but also we thought it'd be a really easy process, knowing Dad knew the field so well, we knew the field so well, that we could just pop them in and off we go. But the weather stations were saying something completely different, and where we thought was going to be a really good site ended up being full of frost pockets. And
so now we don't really listen to Dad on the farm when he makes decisions. We just know he's going to be wrong. So it's he's out the equation, really.
So yeah, we're glad. It's a big investment to just jump in the deep end, really.
Sure, but what I'm hearing there is that getting that detail, that data, and really looking into it and understanding, were the vines likely to be a success? Those frost pockets that you mentioned, which again could bring real risk after investing in that crop, was a really important exercise to go through.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we started off with weather stations, basically the far end of the farm, and then we moved to where the vineyard is now. We also put weather stations there, and because the location of it now has a windbreak, which is just on the wind prevailing side, basically that makes the climate better for the vines. So it's warmer, less wind prone,
south facing,
on chalk as well. So an ideal location for vineyard, I guess.
Well, replicating the Champagne region in France, wasn't it, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. And Tom, you mentioned looking into some of the different varieties that you could grow. What influenced your choice there?
Well, out of the 6.5 hectare block, it's in total, it'd probably be about 500 meters or 600 meters in total difference, and about 100 to 150 feet in height wise. But it's amazing how the temperature changes from the bottom of the vineyard to the top of it. So you obviously get more frost prone varieties of vines and less frost prone. So we planted in the bottom 3 hectares Savoy Blanc, which went in this May, because that's less frost prone. It's a high yielder and can cope with colder weather a bit better than what Bacchus and Pinot Noir can do. And Bacchus is slightly more hardier than what Pinot Noir is. So we basically put Pinot Noir on the top left side, close to the windbreak, to sort of give it the best protection of nice sunlight and less wind. And same with the Bacchus, really. That's
fascinating. So across 6.5 hectares, you're understanding the microclimate and growing of varieties very specifically to that microclimate.
Exactly. And we've also had to put increased amounts of windbreaks in as well. So along the top of the vines now, in case a northerly wind comes, we put a windbreak in the top, and on the top half where the Bacchus and Pinot Noir is, we split those 2 varieties with a windbreak going halfway down the vineyard, just for that sort of the prevailing winds and protection of the winds. Yeah.
And what we haven't done is the champagne varieties that are Chardonnay, Pinot Meunier and Pinot Noir, which is what everyone's wanting. We knew that we'd never be able to grow the Chardonnay on our plot. And it was actually going to cost us more to protect it from the frost than it would actually to grow it and to sell the grapes. So we have had to really look at the varieties that we're planting and just realizing that actually, we're going to have to go down different routes with what wine we're going to end up having. So yeah, it's been a real experience.
When do you hope to get your first grapes that are likely to lead to a marketable product?
Well, we're
touch wood.
Yeah, touch wood. Yeah, we're hoping by 2024. So next spring, next autumn is our first one. That's the stuff planted. So the Bacchus and the Pinot Noir planted 2021, that's the first batch. So 3.5 hectares. Fingers crossed. It won't be a top whack harvest, but we're hoping to get some sort of grapes.
But by 2024 autumn, hopefully all of the vines will give us something.
Yeah, in production. Yeah.
Sure. And in terms of production, give us an idea. How much can 6.5 hectares produce?
Well, it depends on the different varieties. Savoy Blanc, for instance, depending when it's in full production, could yield between 15 to 20 tons per hectare. Bacchus could be more like, say, well, depending on a year, between say 10 and 15 ton a hectare, and probably the same with the Pinot Noir.
And you measure that tonnage as in picked grape? Is that
exactly
how you manage yield?
That's the produce basically.
So we've spent some time thinking about why you've diversified an element of your farm business, and also how you've gone about that. But a big question I've got for you is, well, how are you going to find your end market for the produce when you get to harvest?
I think we know that. I think the whole point of our Instagram, actually, which we started a couple of years ago, was because I lived in London and I would never get out of the boys what they were doing on the farm on a daily basis. So the whole point of that was to put up videos of what we're doing every day. And the reason we started it was to have something, a basis to sell our wine on eventually, which was a real dream. But we started that and we went down more of the sort of farming route on that. But actually, I think for me, for all of us, the dream is to have our own winery, our own processing plant, and our own bottles eventually, like labelled and selling to local farm shops, and maybe even going down the supermarket route. That would be our absolute dream. But I think at the moment we're just looking at producing really good grapes and selling to local wineries and local estates that want our grapes. So at the moment we're just sort of taking a bit at a time. But our end goal is to properly.
It's actually funny because a year ago we've obviously had people come out to see the vineyard and see what it looks like and aesthetically and stuff like that. And I would say we only had sort of one winery interested, whereas all of a sudden this year it's gone from having one winery interested to sort of there's 2, 3, or even not 4 wineries that are now interested in sort of taking our produce.
The demand is massive now.
It's which is better because obviously then we don't have to sell to just one person. We could do multiple. We could just do one, or we could even not sign a contract. And when we get the harvest, it all depends on risk and how risky you want to leave it. But we could just sell on the spot at maybe a higher price, but who knows?
Very much the same as farming, to be fair, as it is now.
Yeah,
same as the wheats.
But I think for us, we just wanted to produce some really good grapes to be able to sell on. And then end goal, is to be able to go and do our own wine and have a really good product at the end of it.
Sure. So you're talking about that really good product that's going to be a good product because you've really thoroughly researched it, what you're growing, where you're growing it, how you're growing it, and you're clearly constantly starting to build your end market right now before the crop's actually ready. So that sounds very, very exciting. But you've also, we were talking earlier on about glamping, and you mentioned that, Georgie. So there could have been other enterprise routes you could have gone down. So why vineyards and not glamping?
It's interesting. I'd say, well, this is the bigger risk, I guess, because in theory, if we're going to be a bit on the negative side of things, it would take roughly 8 to 9 years to get your money back in the vineyard.
Yeah.
And then also with glamping wise, I'd say there's a lot of campsites, glamping, Airbnbs, that sort of tree huts, you name it, around the area. So I guess in order to go into that, it's a big risk because you're having a lot of competition. Would you agree?
A lot of competition, yeah.
And
I think it was something we knew we could go down that route at a later stage when we've got, the vineyard up and running and things like that. We can sort of tap onto that later. But glamping, we love the idea, but like Tom said, the competition would be huge, especially around us. And like we mentioned earlier, I think with COVID, that was such a big time for everyone to stay in the country and to use. I don't know whether that's going to be a long-lasting venture for everybody. I mean, I'm sure it works on a lot of farms, but I think for us, we were really keen to get our teeth into something that was going to hopefully give us quite a lot back in the future and support the three of us as well, because three of us being really keen. It's not common for all of us to be back on the farm and wanting to farm together. So giving us another little extension to the farm was what we wanted, and something big enough to really get our teeth into.
But never say never, though.
Never say never.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's fantastic to see, all three of you so passionate about, bringing in this new venture onto your farm. I mean, it's absolutely terrific. But the vineyard carries risks as well as other alternatives. I mean, the glamping, yes, as you said, carries risks, but the vineyard carries risks. What are they, do you think? What are the main risks?
Them not growing.
Yeah.
Not producing.
Having the main plot in the wrong area, where if you get a frost come May and it wipes out when the buds are just coming out, you could wipe out a lot of the bottom of the vineyard. So you obviously then that would produce no grapes.
Yeah, all of our yield would be down.
So that's the huge one. Maybe the other one is, say there's a massive surplus of grapes in the UK. People might say, oh no, I don't want to take those grapes. And obviously once you've harvested your grapes, you want them to go within 2 days, or they've got to be pressed within 2 days. So you're up fighting against others potentially. You could be putting all the effort into harvest them, and then no one ends up wanting the end produce. So that's a huge risk as well.
And again, climate, like farming, climate is just huge.
Yeah.
Not having a sunny summer and then having a huge amount of rain in autumn before you harvest is nightmare.
And likewise, very hot temperatures, I understand, in France. That's one of the issues, is that it can damage the actual grape and it's the juice yield, can't it? So it's not without risks, is it?
Definitely not. Yeah.
Never.
What's the next step? You hope to be harvesting next autumn, don't you? So what are you going to be doing in the meantime? What practically are you busy doing?
Well, to be fair, on Monday or Tuesday next week, we're applying chicken manure, which is in a pelleted form. So that's going onto the vines. Our consultants recommended if we put it on in the autumn, by the time the chicken manure sort of works into the ground and goes to the roots, by the time spring comes next year, it's then there and it's ready for the roots to absorb the nutrition, and then it helps them grow out quite fast in the spring. So that's a big job. What else?
Then off the vineyard, we're sort of getting the drill ready, putting new coulter discs on, ready for planting the winter wheat and winter barley.
Yeah, well, I mean, to be honest, we're trying to work the vineyard work around the farming work, so that all three of us can sort of, chop and change. But realistically, we do all like a little turn on the vineyard tractor.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of mowing, by next year we'll probably be doing a bit of leaf trimming, spraying is happening on the older vines as we speak. Always mowing, so we've got a cover crop within the vines at the moment, which is amazing. It obviously gives back the nutrition that they need, but also is amazing for the bees and the butterflies. So we're constantly mowing that, because that grows amazingly well.
Yeah.
But yeah, the older they get, the more established they get, the more the work ramps up. But we do have a really, really great a couple of guys that come out and help with the more of the labour side. So we're really lucky to be able to help. They're able to help us.
Thinking about all of the experience that you've gained over the last 5 years looking into this new enterprise, what top tips, what advice would you like to share with our listeners today?
For me, it's the speaking to as many different people in that industry as you possibly can. And we're so lucky around here. We've had people like Patrick McGrath, who is really local to us, and he's involved with Tattinger down in Kent. Just amazing people who will just give their opinion, help us with research.
So getting that great advice, good advice indeed, Georgie. Tom and Will, what would you add?
What the pros and cons are to it.
Yeah, I'd say rule number one, don't rush in, basically.
I thought you were going to say don't panic.
No, that as well. But research, you need to do research on it before because a lot of people just would like to diversify, because I guess it's a buzzword and it means it's a good thing. But also you could argue, don't diversify. If your business is doing well as it is, then why make the change as it is? So it's a happy medium of diversifying for the benefit, rather than just diversifying and then you're going to lose money.
Thank you, Georgie, Tom and Will from Rowles Farm for sharing your story about diversification, and good luck with your vineyard. That's it for this podcast, but do tune in again as we meet the experts throughout the season, exploring the many immediate and longer-term questions for growers and farmers in the UK. If you have any questions that you'd like us to ask the experts, email info@agri.co.uk. See you next time.